Is this proof Brian Jones was murdered? 50 years after, an inquest recorded death by misadventure, drowning while under the influence of drink and drugs at some point over the night of July 2nd and morning of July 3rd. But the timing of the guitarist's death, 3 weeks after he was sacked from the band he founded, has always raised more questions than it answered. Now an investigative writer who, over 30 years, has re-examined the evidence and interviewed those present is set to unveil a new Netflix documentary on the subject. Terry Rawlings said, "At the center of it all is the equivocal figure of Jones, a drug addict who randomly fathered children, beat and abandoned girlfriends, destroyed every friendship he made and yet was key to the image and sound of one of the greatest rock and roll bands ever." Gallery: The Early Days of the Rolling Stones Stars Insider. John Lennon, who had been talking about forming a supergroup with Jones just before he drowned, later said he was different over the years as he disintegrated. He ended up the soul of the band until he blew it. Born in Cheltenham in 1942, Louis Brian Hopkin Jones was the son of a piano-teaching aeronautical engineer, Louis. Mum Louisa played. Brian inherited their talent and was first clarinet in the orchestra at Cheltenham Grammar School. It was jazz. After getting his girlfriend pregnant, he left school at 17 and spent a summer busking in Europe, which is when he decided to form a band of his own, placing an advert in Jazz News in May 1962. He also was responsible for evolving their outrageous, unisex look inspired by his German-Italian model girlfriend, Anita Pallenberg. Woad spent time at Andy Warhol's infamous factory in New York. She took him to buy. Hailed as the soul of the band, it was bassist Bill Wyman who summed up his importance: "No Jones, no Stones." He formed the band, and when he found it, he hammered it across to the world, with idealism and commitment. He was very influential. By the time he was 17, Jones had fathered 2 children by 2 different women. A son in 1961, Jones had another boy with girlfriend Pat Andrews, whom he later abandoned, and 3 years later, a son with Linda Lawrence, who later married the singer Donovan. Within months of that birth, another girlfriend, Dawn Malloy, announced that she was pregnant and given £700 to keep quiet. It was, however, his romance with Anita Pallenberg that defined Jones. In 1967, Jones, Anita and Richards went to Morocco. Jones overdosed. "I quit." Day after Jones announced his departure from the band in June 1969. The Stones had. Jones issued a statement: "I no longer see eye to eye with the others over the discs we are cutting. I want to play the band gave him a £100,000 payoff plus £20,000 a year for as many years as the band continued, equivalent today to £1.6 million and £323,000. He considered Jagger, not Jones, to be the real star, and he wanted Jagger and Richards to write their own songs because there was money in songwriter." Oldham later said Jonas' life was becoming more desperate for him day by day due to his uncontrollable drug use, drinking, paranoia, and rows with fellow band members. "I always felt," in a 2012 documentary, Jagger said, "Keith and I took drugs, but Brian took too many drugs of the wrong kind, and he wasn't functioning as a musician." Fame doesn't sit very comfortably on anyone's shoulders. But some people's Jonas' fragile state of mind was intensified by a series of drug busts as police pursued a campaign of harassment against him. He was only saved. In November 1968, Jones bought Cochford Farm, near Hartfield, Sussex, the former home of A.A. Milne. It was shortly after midnight on Thursday, July 3, 1969, that an ambulance was called to Cochford. The first policeman, Brian Jones, was dead, his body retrieved from the pool and lying on the side. According to the official version of events, there were just 3 guests at Cochford that night: Jonas builder Frank Thorogood, his girlfriend Anna Woolen, and a nurse, Janet Lawson, the girlfriend of Jonas' minder, Tom Keelock. They gave statements to police saying that Jones was drunk or had been drinking. Lawson said all 3 insisted that they had independently left the pool and gone to separate parts of the house minutes before he drowned alone. In a letter written 15 years ago, P.C. Evans said the behavior and demeanor of the witnesses at the scene gave rise to suspicion which has remained with me. Thorogood was, in fact, the first person taken away in an ambulance to be treated for an injured wrist. Astonishingly, this didn't raise any suspicions as to how he had come by the injury. Jonas' body was taken to the mortuary at around 6 a.m. According to other accounts, however, it seems likely that there were several more people present at Cochford that night. One witness, a socialite friend of Jones, Nicholas Fitzgerald, said he arrived at 11 p.m. to join the party and saw at least 3 men and a woman looking at a floating body in the pool. He said he was then told by a man who answered to the description of Minder Keelock F*** off or you'll be next. DCI Bob Marshall, head of the investigation team, said there were 6 or so friends of Jones with him that night. But police never. Thorogood and mates M.O. Tucker and Johnny Betsworth had been hired originally by Richards to renovate his home Redlands in West Wittering, Sussex. It later transpired that Tucker was a police informant who had triggered the notorious Redlands drugs bust in 1967 when Jagger's girlfriend Mary Ann Faithfull was discovered by police naked on a fur rug. A Mars bar may or may not have been involved. Richards had sacked the builders after liberties were taken and they went to work for Jones, who had just bought Cochford. Between November 1968 to his death in July 1969, Jones paid his builders £18,000, £291,000 today, a staggering sum. They were on pound. As the months wore on, the builders increasingly abused his hospitality, ordering steaks from his butcher and charging them to him, and making hash brownies in his kitchen. Jones became increasingly exasperated. He was also deep, murder or an accident. In 2008, before her death from cancer, Janet Lawson, who later changed her name by deed poll, gave an interview in which she claimed the following: Frank Thorogood was not doing the building work properly. Brian had sacked him that day. There was something in. She said she went to find Jones' asthma inhaler, and while she was in the kitchen, Frank came in a lather. His hands were shaking. Tom Keelock, who was Brian's minder hired by the Stones, told me that Frank murdered him with his friend M.O. Tucker as an accomplice. It was not that Brian sacked them on the Thursday, which was the day they should have been paid. He says Frank believed he was owed £6,000, £97,000 today, and he needed the money to pay his mates. Rowland said that and the person behind the cover-up was Stone's minder. Rawlings adds Tom Keelock was there in the attic. Multiple witness statements point to Brian dying at 9:30 p.m., but it wasn't phoned through to the police until 12:30 am, by which time Tom had laid a false trail and everyone had alibis sorted. The fact that Keelock's brother was a senior policeman added to theories of a cover-up. Keelock also told the filmmaker Stephen Woolley, who was working on the 2005 movie Stoned, that Thorogood had committed the crime with M.O. and Johnny looking on. Everyone knew what Brian was like, especially at a party. Maybe he did just go for a swim. I wanted to know. The only cat I could ask was the one I think got rid of everybody and did the whole disappearing trick, so that when the cops arrived it looked like it was just an accident. Maybe it was. Maybe he did the right thing, but I don't know. You can't get to the band's former road manager Sam Cutler said that Klein's report pointed the finger at Keelock as the prime and only suspect. Keelock. Almost all of those who were reported to be present are now dead, including Keelock, Thorogood, Lawson, Tucker, and Betsworth. Butterflies and a burial. 2 days after Jonas' death, the Rolling Stones played a free concert in Hyde Park, which turned into a tribute show. Jagger, dressed in a white tunic, read from the Percy Shelley poem Adonais, then hundreds of white butterflies were released. Richards wrote in his autobiography, "We wanted to see Jones off in grand style. The ups and downs with the guy are one thing, but when his time's over, release the doves, or in this case the sackfuls of white butterflies." His funeral was held in Cheltenham on July 10. Watts and Wyman. The last word should go to Shirley Arnold, the Rolling Stones secretary, who said the sadness of his dying is somehow not so bad as the sadness of seeing him try to live. MSN are empowering women in sport this summer. Find out more about
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park,